Welcome to this video on the technical background for AI for global climate cooperation. In this video, we'll explain the conceptual challenges of global climate cooperation. We'll explain how our RiceN simulation works that you can use to model this complicated problem. And finally, we'll present the free submission tracks in which you can submit your solutions and analyses.
Cooperation on climate change faces a tragedy of the commons. This is a problem that occurs when entities have unconstrained access to a public good. In the climate change setting, the climate is that public good. Here, entities act in their self-interest and neglect others' well-being. This lack of cooperation eventually results in the depletion of the public good. As an example, suppose there are few sheep eating grass in a pasture. The growth of grass and its consumption are balanced and sustainable. However, if more sheep consume grass, there is a risk of overconsumption. This may benefit some sheep in the short term, but harms the collective as there might be not enough grass in the long term. The climate faces a similar problem. Individuals may emit too much carbon and not mitigate enough to protect the climate in the long term. The tragedy of the commons can be prevented by cooperation. Agents could agree to collectively protect the climate. For instance, they might each agree to limit their carbon emissions. However, achieving and maintaining cooperation is hard. This is because agents may disagree about long-term climate goals and their priorities. Hence, the challenge is to design negotiations and agreements that align individual goals with the collective goal. Even if regions reach an agreement, there is no global authority to enforce agreements. Negotiations and agreements need to be self-enforcing, that is, they should incentivize long-term cooperation and avoid free riders. The tragedy of the commons is only one complication in this complex, decentralized decision-making setting. For example, regions need to account for uncertainty due to complex environmental and economic dynamics. The climate is a public good. Each region's actions affect the climate and may affect other regions whether they like it or not. They also need to decide whether to trust other regions and whether they should follow through on their commitments. Considering these factors, regions may show complex strategic behaviors and may not commit. These complexities need to be taken into account when designing negotiations and agreements.
To capture the relationship between economic choices and climate change, experts use integrated assessment models. These models incorporate feedback loops between both climate and economic dynamics, which leads to more informed policymaking. However, most of these models don't really explore cooperation between regions, which can be very difficult to attain, as COP26 has demonstrated. Now, that being said, cooperation is necessary to avoid catastrophic climate outcomes. So, to investigate how to incentivize cooperation, we made RiceN, which is a multi-region climate economic simulator with 27 fictitious different regions based on data from 189 countries and regions. Each region's decisions are controlled by a distinct self-interested artificially intelligent agent who cares about its own well-being, which leads to economic choices. However, the negotiation component makes it possible for regions to communicate and collaborate. How, when, and which regions negotiate is determined by the negotiation protocol designed by you. By looking at how different negotiation protocols affect regions' decisions, you can explore what kind of negotiation protocols lead to better outcomes. That's the goal of this competition: to design negotiation protocols that enable cooperation between regions for better climate and economic outcomes. The main objective of a negotiation component is to help agents communicate with each other and form agreements. These agreements then affect how agents choose to act, leading to potential cooperation. These decisions affect regions' economies as well as the global climate. In short, negotiating leads to agreements, which affect agents' actions and therefore the climate and the economy. To see how this works, let's take a closer look at the climate economic component and the negotiation component. The climate economic component consists of a simulation that spans 100 years, with each step in the simulator being 5 years long. Economic activity increases emissions, and emissions raise temperature. Higher temperatures cause damage. The observable public state includes variables such as global temperature, carbon mass, consumption, and other factors. Based on this observable state, agents then choose actions such as how much to mitigate and invest. In turn, these actions affect how the climate and economy co-evolve. At each time step, before acting, agents refer to the negotiation protocol to try to reach agreements. Your goal is to structure these negotiations to reach agreements that improve climate and economic outcomes. We provide a baseline bilateral negotiation protocol as an example. In this protocol, there are 3 phases. In the first phase, agents propose potential agreements to each other. The agents who've received proposals have to evaluate them, after which they agree or decline to these proposals. Accepted proposals are retained as agreements, which impact the climate economic actions of the agents involved in the agreement. The bilateral protocol is one option, but there are many possibilities. Some examples we list in our white paper include negotiation protocols that treat agreements as binding or non-binding, regions making unilateral commitments to behave in a certain manner, complex multilateral negotiations involving multiple regions discussing simultaneously. An example of this is climate clubs. And finally, we can also imagine dynamic, responsive negotiation protocols that are learned and that learn. Remember, the agents representing regions may also learn, which means the negotiation component must be able to handle strategic behavior on the part of the regions. We're very excited to see what you come up with.
The RiceN simulator models the interactions between regions and the environment. You can use a reinforcement learning algorithm, such as PPO, to train the agents. However, please notice that the choice of RL algorithms is not the focus of this competition. We expect carefully designed and innovative negotiation protocols to be the ones that truly make a difference. In RiceN, each region makes 2 types of observations from the environment: economic factors from other regions and global climate-related factors. Based on these observations, regions may negotiate and form agreements. Then each region acts, and the simulation advances to the next time step. Please note that regions may choose to ignore agreements. There are 3 tracks in this competition. For track 1, your team will submit any modified code and auto-generated training logs. The submission will be evaluated using a numerical score. The score is calculated as the hypervolume enclosed by the 10 most recent solutions. The score approximates the area under the Pareto curve defined by the submission. You're not required to submit a technical report. However, we will invite the top scorers in track 1 to write a technical report to be published in the proceedings. For track 2, your team will also submit a written report along with any modified code and training logs. In addition to the numerical score, an expert jury will review and evaluate the submitted report. The jury will also assess the real-world impact, motivation, rationale, feasibility, legality, and ethics. Track 3 is a free-form submission to present points of improvement and weaknesses in the simulation. You may include a write-up, example code, or other ways to demonstrate your analysis. An expert jury will review and evaluate the significance of the submission. For more details, please visit us at www.AI4climatecoop.org. You can also follow us on Twitter and WeChat. We hope you all join us. Thank you for watching.